Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard, and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
If Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
hello and welcome everyone to a Comic Movie Marks video. Woo!
Oh yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, baby.
We're here to review Guardians of the Galaxy numero uno, because going into Infinity War, we're going to review the MCU movies that we have not reviewed, and then rank all the MCU movies going into Infinity War.
Yeah, we're right around the corner from Infinity War, and I think we're knocking quite a few off the list. We should be pretty close. I'm not sure off the top of my head what else we got left, but I know we're nearing the finish line of this project, the MCU. In hindsight, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, two left after this. We have Ant-Man and Age of Ultron.
Ooh, looking forward to neither of those.
Maybe we'll combo them up into a 5-minute package deal.
Yep, there we go. Perfect.
I busted out that idea a while back of 1-minute reviews. And I actually saw somebody later on. I saw something where people were doing 1-minute reviews. I kind of feel like Ant-Man and Age of Ultron might be in that ballpark.
Yeah, possibly.
Like every review, let's first start off with the statistics and the Rotten Tomato score.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. I was just about to say all the bullshit you do not care about. So obviously Guardians of the Galaxy was a Marvel Phase 2 movie. It came out in 2014, directed by James Gunn.
Finally getting into the Disney now.
Yep, exactly. And it shows. So the box office worldwide for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 was $773 million. 333 of that was domestically, and then 440 overseas. In comparison to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, just to give you kind of something to compare it to, Volume 2 did 863.8 million worldwide, so almost basically about 90 million more than the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and then it also did well both domestically and overseas as well. The Rotten Tomatoes scores, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 got a 91 on the tomato meter and an audience score of 92. And then again, just to give you the comparison, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 received an 83% on the tomato meter and an audience score of 88. So unanimously there, both the critics and the audience are ranking the first Guardians of the Galaxy above Volume 2.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm also looking. I thought I had my IMDb app open, but I did not.
Oh, way to not be fucking ready, Shane. Jesus Christ.
The typical.
You had one job. One fucking job, man.
Oh, that's it? Wow. All right. This is going to be easy on my part. All right. So.
Yeah, I'll do the review. I don't give a shit.
All right. So IMDb 8.1 out of 10 and Metascore 76 with a whopping 52 critic reviews on Metascore. I love how they put that on there. 52 critic reviews as opposed to, and obviously these are probably audience as well, but IMDb received 825,000 reviews on their site. So that's that's pretty drastic there.
We got what is this the end? Yeah, I believe this is the end of Phase 2 with Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think it's close. I don't think it's quite the end of Phase 2. So actually the end of Phase 2 was Avengers Age of Ultron and Ant-Man are technically I guess in obviously Age of Ultron, and I didn't realize Ant-Man was Phase 2 as well.
Yeah, Ant-Man seems to get the afterbirth of things. Every Avengers movie afterwards. And still part of the same phase.
Right.
Because Ant-Man and Wasp is supposedly supposed to be after, or excuse me, before Infinity War, even though it comes out after Infinity War.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So again, with this, Ant-Man, it came out after Avengers Age of Ultron. And I think it's... Oh, no, its contents are after Age of Ultron as well. So, oh well, it's not Ant-Man review. It's Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's make some pina coladas here and let's sing in the rain. So,
yeah, there we go. It's perfect.
Let's start off with our positives, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, obvious positive. I don't know too many people that don't complain about this, but the soundtrack, phenomenal.
Yeah, Absolutely. That was my top, not my top pro, but the first one I noted down because it jumps almost right into the movie. You know, you kind of have the depressing intro with the mom's death and everything, and then boom, jumps right into upbeat, and you're like, okay, this feels right. I don't know the words, but
yeah, you don't need to.
We're
just
close.
do the sounds. It's just like
Exactly.
the Lion King song. No one knows the words to that shit.
Yeah,
you just make
exactly. Yeah, so, but it jumps right into that. And it kind of, not fully like an Iron Man 1 situation, but sort of that feel, you know, where you're getting more mainstream songs as opposed to just a score thrown into this. And you're like, okay, this is, you know, a little bit different of a feeling almost immediately.
Hooked on a feeling.
Yeah, boom, pa-ching ching.
It's very rare if I ever actually want to buy a score or a soundtrack, and this is up there with it. I wanted to get it. I almost downloaded it off of iTunes, even though I don't even have iTunes. But I almost downloaded it because it was fairly cheap too, and it's a phenomenal soundtrack. I don't know if you need a certain age or not to enjoy it or not, but I'm pretty much a person of all genres of music for the most part. I like them all. I don't have really any one particular, but you know, I grew up with oldie songs with my dad playing it, and so this is the exact shit that I heard when I was a kid. So of course, it just plugged right in real well for me, and I thought every song fit the scenario very well. It wasn't just that they played a hit song at a moment, but
Right.
every hit song actually had a purpose into what was going on in the scene. So I thought it was really, really well done.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. I actually did download the soundtrack just because I pay for the iTunes thing, and I downloaded it a while back. I actually would think if we're comparing Volume 1 versus Volume 2, I liked Volume 1's a little bit better. I actually found myself not really caring for the second one all that much. I think I have a couple songs downloaded off of it, but for the most part, the first one soundtrack spot on.
Definitely. Another pro is Drax. Dave Bautista, man. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that Dave Bautista would have been my favorite part of this movie? I don't know why exactly he is, but I love the fact that he doesn't. Well, actually, I do know why, because he doesn't understand metaphors, and it's fantastic. It is some of the best humor because it makes sense. It's not forced because they established that is his character. So all that metaphor, inability to understand metaphors. Like my favorite part is when they're locked into that little chamber and they're trying to escape the prison. And that's when they kind of discover the problem, and they're just throwing metaphors at him, and he's just not getting it. And he's
Right.
like, oh, and Peter Quill's like, oh, next to the walking, talking thesaurus here. I can barely even say thesaurus. Anyway, and he's like, don't you dare call me a thesaurus. And like, you know, it's a metaphor, man. And he's like, and then Rocket goes into the whole thing about his race is literal. They don't understand metaphors. It's just going to go over his head. Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast.
Yeah.
Just one of my favorite
So
lines.
great. Yeah.
And then, of
Yeah.
course, Gamora adds onto it with, I'm going to die with a bunch of idiots or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I agreed. He's definitely one of the top characters. And his character, even like some of the backstory, and I'll get into my negatives a little bit later, but some of the backstory for him, you know, of what his end goal is pretty black and white. I mean, he's just trying to get revenge on Ronan, and then eventually he's like, oh, Ronan was just a pawn. You know, I'm gonna go after Thanos, and I love that. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like, oh, okay, now I can't remember what Gamora says, but you know, basically,
I hope you're at peace now or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. and he's like, no, Ronan was something to the effect of he's just a pawn, and now I'm gonna go after Thanos, and she kind of gives him this look like, oh fuck. So it's such a great character, and like you said, Dave Bautista, what a surprise! Who'd have thought that he'd be able to pull this off so well? So definitely a bright spot. For me, one of the characters that I really enjoyed to a point is actually Ronan. I feel like this is one of the more stronger villains. Eventually gets nerfed, but he has such a great motive. Great dialogue. He carries himself really well. He has some great scenes when he puts the axe to the one what do they call it? Zendarian. One of the
Xandar? The Xandar Nova Corps guy.
Yeah, the Zendarian's head or whatever, and then the blood, comes dripping down, and then the other one that he's talking to right before, I think he's like talking with Thanos, and the one guy is basically calling him a failure and stuff like that, and then he like uses
Watch
his
your
little
tongue.
yeah, and then breaks his neck, like
Just
spins
the
it
force
around
of his
like,
hammer.
yeah, exactly. Turns it around backwards. So he had some up until the end. He had some great parts in this movie, and I feel like he was a great villain. You kind of feel the movie doesn't have a whole lot of tension to it. But Ronan he brings that, and when he was whooping Drax's ass and kind of mocking him at the same time, on both accounts, the first time that they meet, and then even the second time when he's like, "Oh, I do remember your family," and their screams were pitiful or something like that. Like he had some great lines that obviously I can't remember, but
They're fantastic though.
yeah, exactly, those
Just believe
things.
One of the things about Ronan that I did really like is one thing I did notice in this part anyway is that, I mean, you really look at this character, he's like standing up to Thanos, like the idea that we have of Thanos, and he's kind of talking down to him and stuff, and then Thanos flips around, kind of scolds him a little bit, but then when he gets control of that Infinity Stone, he's like, now call me boy, or something like that, call me boy, and I'm gonna wreck Xandar and enslave him and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm coming after you. I mean, he's saying this to Thanos. I mean, you can't get any more hardcore than that. And it just sucks how it ends for him. Like, they really built him up. They did a really, really good job. It's like wrestling terms here. They built him up so well just to have him lose to a roll-up,
Right. Yeah, yep, exactly.
Small package.
Yeah, just to put over Roman Reigns, or in this case, Peter Quill.
yeah, that's it. It really sucks that ultimately happened.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. Then that was definitely one of the things I noticed as well, was him kind of standing up to Thanos, like, man, this guy does not give a fuck. So yeah, he was awesome. On the Thanos, I actually like, a lot of people have bitched about the Thanos that we have seen up until this point in Infinity War and like some of the trailers and stuff like that. And I kind of get it, from seeing certain things, but even in kind of like how he's presented in this, I almost forgot. I knew he was in this in certain aspects, talking with Ronan and everything, but he seems so much more menacing in this than kind of like what we have in the trailer. Like, he seems like he's gonna just wreck anybody, and his armor looks badass, the color tone and stuff like that. So I can understand some of the gripes that people are having, and I almost hope that the way he's presented in Guardians is carried over into Infinity War a little bit better.
Ronan, again, I go back to Ronan a little bit. He does have his dialogue with Drax there I wanted to talk about real quick, where he doesn't even know what Drax is talking about, who he killed. And it really reminded me, if anybody's seen the Street Fighter movie from 1995, was Jean-Claude Van Damme with Bison, when Chun-Li is fighting him, and she's talking about, you killed my family and stuff like that. And he has the quote, the day Bison graced your presence, it was the worst day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
And I thought that was that's almost kind of what he was getting at. I thought that we were going to have him quote the Great Bison from the great 1995, somewhere around there anyway, Street Fighter movie.
Fantastic.
Overall the movie is pretty solid. Chris Pratt's great. Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, great. Gamora, great. Good for the most part. Nebula, a little whiny sometimes, but we later understand, in hindsight, we can understand some of her motives anyway. Yeah. So I thought overall the characters worked. Everybody kind of gelled well together. The Ravengers, again, in hindsight, we kind of see how that whole setup for Peter Quill and Yondu kind of actually turned out. Yeah, I think it's a solid little movie. So if you have any more positives, we can go into negatives.
Just one of the things that I did notice, one of the last positives to touch on, kind of what you were saying, how they're establishing some certain things in the first Guardians. They did a really good job, a better job than what I had originally thought in kind of setting some things up, some very small details where for example, the relationship between Quill and Yondu, I thought that was such a drastic shift from the first one to the second one. But no, they actually kind of establish, if you're paying attention and you're watching it in hindsight like we are, they do establish there's some sort of relationship. You know, the one Zendarian or whatever, or a Ravager actually criticizes Yondu and says, you've always been soft on the boy. And you watch that like, okay, I wonder, they almost did kind of have a direction. And then they talk about Peter's dad and all sorts of things that I didn't think originally they did a great job at carrying over into the second one, but they actually did. When you're watching it in hindsight, everything works. There's nothing where you're like, oh, well, they obviously just pulled that out of their ass. So, I give them props. That's less on the first one, but more in like kind of the universe building of understanding where they're going to go in the second one and making sure it works. So I thought they did well with it.
All right, so I guess let's get into some of our negatives. Honestly, I don't have too many negatives about the movie. I guess most of my negatives all lie into the third act. The ending there is pretty much most of them. But I guess one thing I didn't like is the collector. I don't know. I guess he works, he functions, but it just seemed to all culminate to the end here to the collector. And that's where everybody came together, and that's when you realize what it is. And I guess Benicio del Toro does a great job as the collector and everything, but it did seem like a kind of a forced moment to get everybody there, to get the Ravagers there, to get Ronan there, and all this other bullshit to go on, and then to have just the servant grab the Power Stone and just blow herself up. Or I still can't tell whether or not she was supposed to, if she was committing suicide or she thought she could control it and attack him or not. I'm still not sure about that one. But yeah, no, it just seemed kind of like the low point of the movie, because then you see the dumb thing Drax does with calling Ronan because he's drunk or something like that. And then the Ravagers show up, and that little part right there seems like the slow part to me, because Gamora is dying, or she's about to die, or whatever, and Peter Quill gives his mask on her. So that kind of me is always the little slow part. It's the transition to the third act, and so they need to figure out how they can get everybody there. And it's a little convenient. We'll just go with that.
Yeah, I agree. I actually did. I noted some of the parts in that as well that you actually already touched on. It is kind of a slow, convenient part in the movie. Mine kind of ties into a lot of that. So some of my biggest critiques is, and I get it. I understand where they were going with this. This is definitely more of a comedic action adventure that only dabbles in heart and emotion versus something that it's more heartfelt, more character driven, as the second one is. This one, I understand what they were up against, but I guess most of my critiques would be, Drax's motivation. It's good, but ultimately it's a little overshadowed by kind of everything else that's going on in the movie, and it's I feel like you should feel sorry for the guy, and you kind of don't, because of everything else that's going on. That has always been one of my critiques with this. There's a lot of other things that they dabble in just a little bit. Ultimately, I don't feel like, even though Ronan was such a badass character up until the end, I didn't feel the tension and the fact that he was going to kill, basically, he's going to wipe out everybody, billions of people or whatever they say. I didn't feel that they did a good job kind of building that moment up of like, holy shit, this is going to be the end of everything. Similar, I kind of compare it to like Rogue One or another Star Wars movie, where they do a good job building up like, fuck, this could be the end of everything. And in this, they just kind of, it's so surface level, and you get the part where it's, it's going to happen, but then ultimately you're like, well, you just don't feel like there's anything really at stake, and in my opinion, and part of that is because of the jokes, and like Peter has that cool, like really cool motivational speech. They build everything up, and everyone's like, yeah, we're with you, and then Rocket just throws in some jokes there. So it's just
standing
more
like a bunch of jackasses.
Right, yeah. It's more of what they were shooting for with this film, so I get it. those are moments that I wanted a little bit more out of, and unfortunately, because of the style that they're doing with the movie, you can't really get that. That coupled with the infamous dance off at the end that totally nerfs Ronan. Those were my main gripes with the movie.
Yeah, so the whole ending woohoo moment we get with the dumb net by the Nova Corps thing, I'm like, okay, that is just, how is that going to work at all? Like, how long could that work? It just seems like a really dumb plan.
Not a great plan.
Eventually, they're all going to blow up. Like, like, was you just going to hit his shit in reverse and beep, beep? Like, just,
Right.
how long is this? How long can this go? It was just kind of a stupid plan that they just all made this net for timing. I understand what they're doing. They're trying to delay him so the Guardians can get in there and blow up Ronan.
Right.
But at the same time, it felt like there was a lot more they could have done. Like, you know, what is he going to do? So it just seemed like a weird way to create tension with the stupid net. And then eventually when we do get down to the planet, when we're on the planet surface, yeah, you know, Groot sacrifices himself, which, okay, cool, fine. Yeah, somehow a bundle of sticks is going to protect you from a high impact from a ship. But sure, all right, let's do it. And then the dance off. Now, I kind of used to defend the dance off, and I kind of do a little bit. But the only reason why I don't really defend the dance off too much anymore is because now I've realized not that it was necessarily a dumb moment in the movie, but it does actually nerf the shit out of Ronan, and it does kind of take away from Ronan's impact in the movie because they had him be such a badass throughout the movie. It's really hard, and I understand what they're trying to do, but it's really hard to see him lose to a pelvic thrust or pelvic sorcery, according to Gamora.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. It's an interesting, and I understand, like, it works. I remember, you know, when we first saw this movie and walk out like, okay, yeah, that works. Sounds good. You know, he's trying to distract him, and of course, you know, being from a different planet, he's going to have different things to make Ronan go, what the fuck? You know, so that's where the defending it kind of comes into, of like the distraction. But when you have, and even watching it now, you know, this is, I don't know, the 30th time I've seen it or whatever, 20th, and watching it now and continuing to watch it, and you see like how Ronan is built so badass, even as you said, kind of going up against Thanos, where he's ready just to be like, well, fuck you, I'm going to take over the world. You ain't shit, Thanos, you know, like that kind of thing. And then to have this happen ultimately, it's disappointing, and you know, and it just nerfs the shit out of him. And that's the unfortunate thing, I think, with the MCU as a whole, when you have these villains who you do a good job building up just to basically, like you said, lose to a small package.
Ooh. You looking at Chris Pratt's?
yeah. I even paused for a second. I'm like, that actually works both ways.
Just like Shane. Anyway, so yeah, and then we find out the ultimate thing there, that Peter Quill is half something that no one knows. He's not full Terrian. So, and then that leads up to Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So, I mean, it's not too many negatives. It's a solid movie overall. It has fun moments. I think the comedy, probably about 90% of the comedy works for the most part. I think it's pretty solid. It knows what it is, and it definitely uses its strengths to its absolute. And it's not a movie you can really take too serious at all, but in the most part, it works. The soundtrack's fantastic. It looked good. There's no real bad CGI or anything.
No bad
green screen.
For what they were doing, absolutely, it looked fantastic. It's pretty much all CGI for the most part, and it looked great.
So let's give scores. My score is going to be 3.8 out of 5 marks.
All right, mine is almost right in line with that. Mine is 3.7 out of 5 marks, and just in comparison to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I think I ultimately like this one better, even though the character driven aspect of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 holds up a little bit better. This one it was at the time kind of one of a kind. You know, they took the comedy to the next level, and then ended up ripping it off with, you know, something like Thor Ragnarok, even somewhat of Doctor Strange to an extent, with just, you know, spitfire jokes all around. But when this movie first came out, it was taking its own stretch, going in its own direction, from the MCU, and then it's almost like the MCU kind of was like, oh, let's build around that now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it stands alone, stands really well. And yeah, I enjoy it. 3.7.
Cool. All right. We got 2 left now. We got Ant-Man and Age of Ultron. Be ready for our 1-minute reviews of those. And hopefully we can get all these ranked, all 18 movies before Infinity War. Our list, I'm already started on my list a little bit. Our list is, my list anyway, is already interesting. And it's like probably no one else's. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that episode as well. It's gonna be fun. We just gotta knock out a couple more of these and we'll be solid.
yeah, Ant-Man will be the tiny review. Anyway.
Aha, pa-ching
Yeah,
ching.
that was terrible. I'm just gonna delete that.
Wah, wah, wah. No, you gotta leave that in.
This is a fucking dumbass video. All right, in case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. You're one of very few to make it to the end.
Yes, thank you very much.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Comic Movie Marks Podcast and hit the notification bell. You know, all these fucking YouTube channels say this shit, so I'm going to say it now.
Yes, it's perfect. And if you want to hear our full podcast, you can check out our podcast on iTunes or any other podcast subscription service.
Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again.